Hey there, sci-fi lovers. Welcome to our channel, where the universe unfolds and the impossible becomes real. If you're as passionate about the unknown as we are, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more mind-bending adventures just for you.
The sky over Earth was painted with the glow of the Zarlith warship, a massive silver disk stretching across the horizon, casting an eerie shadow over the land below. It was the largest vessel the humans had ever seen, seemingly impenetrable, bristling with unknown weaponry and armored with a metal that no human technology could breach. From it descended a swarm of sleek, insectoid landing crafts, each the size of a building, screeching as they broke through the atmosphere. The Zarliths had come to Earth, confident in their supremacy. A race older than human civilization itself, they had spent eons conquering worlds, consuming the resources of weaker species, and moving on to the next. To them, Earth was just another target, humans just another prey species, too disorganized, too primitive to resist. Their leaders, the High Elders, had studied human history, analyzing the constant warfare, the chaos of nations fighting among themselves, the greed and corruption that seemed to plague their species. All it signified to the Zarliths was a lack of unity, a fractured world ripe for domination. They had misjudged one crucial detail: humans didn't fight each other out of weakness. They fought because conflict was in their very nature. Commander Lyser stood on the bridge of the warship, observing the first wave of landing crafts through the panoramic window. His segmented eyes narrowed in contempt as the alien vessels landed in the heart of Earth's largest cities, New York, Tokyo, London, expecting the usual signs of panic. From his vast experience, he anticipated screams, mass hysteria, and surrender. What he hadn't expected was silence. Through the Zarlith surveillance drones, he could see them now. Human soldiers, tall, resolute, weapons raised, not retreating, but advancing. Civilians didn't run and hide. They gathered in the streets, watching with grim determination. There was no fear in their eyes. Lyser tilted his head, confused. "They do not scatter as prey should," one of his officers remarked, breaking the silence. "They will," Lyser replied, with the cool certainty of a predator who had stalked his prey for centuries. "Their bravado will crumble soon enough." Colonel Sarah Anders stood at the front line in New York, her combat boots planted firmly on the cracked asphalt, eyes trained on the approaching crafts. Around her, soldiers from every branch of the military prepared for the inevitable confrontation. It was an unprecedented moment in human history. For the first time, there were no borders, no nations, just one Earth united against a common threat. Her radio crackled. "Colonel Anders, they're deploying." She adjusted the strap of her rifle. "Hold the line. Do not engage until they make the first move." The alien craft screeched to a halt just above the ground, hovering menacingly. A moment of tense silence followed as both sides waited. The Zarlith ships opened, hissing like serpents as thick, noxious steam poured from their sides. From the shadows, tall figures emerged, towering, insect-like creatures with chitinous armor and spindly limbs that clicked as they moved. They were terrifying, monstrous to behold, their mandibles twitching in the air as they surveyed the human forces. Anders' grip on her rifle tightened, but she didn't flinch. This was what she had trained for. This was what every soldier on Earth had trained for since the day the Zarliths had been detected on their long approach. Humanity had known they were coming for years. But so had the Zarliths. The first creature stepped forward, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the crowd. It emitted a guttural clicking noise, a language undecipherable by human ears, and the translator embedded in Anders' ear crackled with static. "Surrender," it said, the voice mechanical and devoid of emotion. "You cannot resist. Earth is now a Zarlith territory." A wave of cold, simmering anger spread through the human ranks. No one moved. No one lowered their weapons. Anders stepped forward, her gaze hard. "You should have done your homework." The Zarlith didn't react. Its gaze swept over the humans, dismissing them as insignificant. With a sudden burst of speed, it lunged forward, claws raised, intending to strike Anders down. But she was faster. With a precision honed by years of combat, she raised her rifle, firing a single shot into the creature's chest. It screeched in surprise, black blood spraying from the wound as it stumbled backward, clutching its thorax. That was all it took. The human soldiers opened fire in unison, and the streets erupted into chaos. Bullets tore through the Zarlith ranks, and for the first time in their long history of conquest, the aliens realized they had underestimated their prey. The war did not play out as the Zarliths had planned. In the early hours, the invaders struggled to gain ground. Their advanced technology gave them an initial advantage, but the humans adapted quickly. What the Zarliths had viewed as a disorganized rabble was, in truth, a formidable fighting force honed by millennia of warfare. Humans were not the scattered prey species the Zarliths thought. They were predators themselves, fierce, cunning, and resourceful. The Zarlith warship hovered in the sky, watching the carnage below unfold in real time. Commander Lyser's mandibles clicked together in agitation as he observed human forces not only holding their ground but actively pushing back. They had been forced to retreat from New York, their landing crafts burning on the streets below. "We must deploy the neurosuppression beam," one of the officers urged, a sliver of fear creeping into his voice. "It will subdue them. It always works." Lyser's gaze flicked to the officer, his eyes narrowing. He hated the suggestion, though he could not deny the truth of it. In every previous conquest, when brute force had failed, the neurosuppression beam had broken the minds of the resisting populations. It turned otherwise defiant species into compliant drones, pacifying their wills and ending their resistance. But the Zarliths prided themselves on dominance through strength, not manipulation. Still, it was clear that strength alone would not win them this war. The humans were proving to be far more dangerous than anticipated. "Activate it," Lyser ordered reluctantly. The officer moved quickly, his spindly fingers dancing over the control panel. Moments later, a low hum reverberated through the warship, and the neurosuppression beam fired, an invisible wave of psychic energy cascading down across the major cities of Earth. On the ground, Anders felt it immediately. A sharp, piercing sensation stabbed into her mind, and she fell to her knees, clutching her head. Around her, the soldiers cried out in pain, some collapsing as the wave of psychic energy crashed over them. It was like nothing she had ever experienced, a forceful intrusion into her thoughts, clawing at her consciousness, trying to rip away her will to fight. For a moment, she faltered. Doubt crept into her mind, whispering that resistance was futile, that surrender was inevitable. She saw the soldiers around her falter, some dropping their weapons in defeat. But then she remembered. She remembered the years of preparation. She remembered the blood, sweat, and tears that humanity had shed in the lead up to this invasion. She remembered the history of her people, the wars, the conflicts, the struggles. Humanity had never given in, not to themselves, and certainly not to some alien invaders who thought they could break their spirit with a mere mind trick. With a snarl of defiance, Anders forced herself to her feet, fighting back against the mental intrusion. She wasn't alone. All around her, soldiers were rising again, their faces twisted in grim determination. "You think you can break us?" she growled, her voice barely audible through the pain. "You don't know what we're made of." On the Zarlith warship, the officers watched in stunned silence as the humans, one by one, rose to their feet, their weapons raised once more. The neurosuppression beam had failed. They're resisting," an officer stammered, disbelief evident in his voice. Lyser's mandibles twitched in agitation. This was unprecedented. No species had ever resisted the beam. No species had ever fought back with such ferocity after being subjected to its influence. "What are they?" Lyser muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The battle raged for days, with the humans pushing the Zarliths back in every major city. The invaders, who had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, found themselves being hunted instead. The humans fought with a brutal efficiency that the Zarliths had never encountered before. They adapted to the aliens' advanced technology, finding weaknesses and exploiting them ruthlessly. Where brute force failed, the humans employed cunning tactics, luring Zarlith forces into traps and ambushes. The streets of New York became a battleground, with soldiers and civilians fighting side by side. Anders led the charge, her rifle never leaving her hands. Every step the Zarliths took forward was met with fierce resistance, every inch of ground they gained was paid for in blood. And still, the humans kept coming. Lyser watched as the final reports came in. His forces were in full retreat. The humans had taken back New York. Tokyo was lost. London had fallen. Even the warship, once a symbol of Zarlith's supremacy, was being targeted. The humans had devised a plan to bring it down, a strategy so audacious that Lyser hadn't believed it at first. But the humans had done the impossible time and time again. It was over. The Zarliths had been defeated. As the last remaining Zarlith ships fled Earth's atmosphere, Lyser stared out at the blue and green planet below, a sense of shame washing over him. They had come here expecting an easy conquest, believing that humans were nothing more than prey. But they had been wrong. So very wrong. The humans weren't prey. They were predators? On the ground, Colonel Anders stood on the rooftop of a destroyed building, watching the Zarlith warship as it disappeared into the sky. Around her, the streets were filled with the cheers of victory. The humans had won. They had faced the greatest threat they had ever known, and they had come out on top. She lowered her rifle, her expression grim. The fight was over, but she knew this was only the beginning. The universe had just learned a valuable lesson: humanity was not to be underestimated.
Thank you so much for joining us on this cosmic journey. If you enjoyed the ride, please hit that subscribe button and share the adventure with others. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more incredible stories. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the stars.